Welcome everyone to this month's Zoominar. I'm so excited to have Natalie Goldberg with us. I'm going to let her do her entire intro because she doesn't even go by Natalie Goldberg. So we want to make sure that you guys can find her when you need to. But we're going to be talking about estate planning. This is a really important piece of your overall financial plan, which of course is important to me as a financial coach. But as many of you know, there are all of these pieces to the financial plan that I don't handle personally. That's why I connect myself with great investment advisors, with great insurance agents, with great accountants, and with great estate planning attorneys. And so Natalie is one of those, and I'm so excited to have her here today. Let me let her introduce herself. And just so you all know, we are recording this. It will be sent out later, so you'll get the recording if you need to drop off. And there will also be time at the end for questions. So just give us a little bit of time to go through Natalie's experience and some of the pitfalls, and then we'll take questions at the end. But Natalie, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Jessica, for having me. My name is Natalie Goldberg, although on different shows, as well as my books, I go by Natalie Gold. I had a real come to Jesus moment, or I guess I'm Jewish, come to Moses, where it was like, okay, I married a Goldberg, but I was an Elisha, so what do I do? And I'm like, well, I talk about money, so I'm going to be Natalie Elisha Gold. And it's amazing how giving yourself a new name kind of, like gives you this love, and now no one knows what I go by. So Natalie is just fine. And so excited to be here. So as I mentioned, I do quite a bit of TV and commentating as a legal expert on many of the different networks. I say I'm an equal opportunity offender between Fox, CNN, HLN, CNBC, Good Morning America. I mean, literally, Trevor Noah has made fun of my husband and I for a concept of the marriage constitution, which I created. And you know what? I loved every second of it because you cannot buy advertising that good. When I'm not chasing my 2.5-year-old and 15-month-old daughters around the house, I don't sleep. So I'm writing children's books or actual books. The first one was the Millennials Guide to the Universe, which got me a lot of great kind of coverage around the country. And then I wrote Money Mama, and I then helped put together an anthology of women lawyers through the pandemic and our experiences, and then wrote 2 children's books for I Am Ruth as a tribute to RBG, as well as I Love When It's Mommy and Me, because I thought that moms really have it hard. And especially for many of us on the call who are, my assumption is, lawyers, and some of us working parents, it's not easy. So I love what I do because I am able to truly give the gift of legacy to families. And I get to be a lawyer that doesn't have to work with any other lawyers. It is glorious.
It's the only practice area with that benefit. I love it. Tell me how you got into trust and estates as your practice area where you wanted to spend your career.
Like so much of us, Jess, I was at a family office basically, and they were a real estate development company, super wealthy in New York. And they're like telling me how smart I am, how great. And I'm like, they're the billionaire and I'm not. We need to fix this. We need to, as many of our clients, right? Like they're coming to us with this great advice. And then, daddy and son got in a fight, which was kind of a prelude to what I deal with on a regular basis between families. And I ended up, like, my mom was a banker, so this woman came in and was like, do you know of anyone? Because I have an opening in my law firm. And my mom's like, why don't you connect? So I did. And I met my first boss in the trust and estates practice. It was really an elder law firm in New York. And I was able to see, like, oh my God, how much just proper titling of assets, which is really what this whole practice area is, can save a family. And then I'm like, my boss is killing it, and I'm a lowly associate in like the dungeon, WTF. So at 24 years old, I was like, I can do this too. And I hung my shingle, and I was, I live in Colorado now. So people are like, do you love to hike? I'm like, my idea of a hike is 7-inch heels on Park Avenue. So that is my idea of a hike. Jocelyn, I'm looking at you and thank you for the smiles and laughter. It's really getting me going. Hi, Jamie. So happy to see you in here. So I started my own firm and then I was like, oh my God, it is amazing because the stage that I thought I wanted with the jury and like fight. And then I'm like, oh my God, litigation is 7 years of crap until you get finally to, and you're never going to try a case that's worth anything because obviously those people settle. They're smart enough to settle, right? So I'm like, all right, this is really fun to build your own business. And thank God I then was able to, I hope, create a name for myself and we deal with people who are brand new parents who are becoming all the way to billionaires and saving them a lot of money. And I have no shame about it. I like to save people a lot of money and protect their assets because as we know, in this litigious society, we are one lawsuit away. And I'm not going to have my people have one lawsuit get in the way between them and their prosperity and their legacy. So we do a lot of asset protection, a lot of truly protecting of people's affairs. I mean, a lawsuit, I know we deal in that space. Many of us are attorneys, but when you're on the other side, holy moly, it just disrupts your life. And it's just terrible. So it's great to do what I do. I truly love it.
No, we're so excited that you're in the space and you are bringing, such a great energy to what can be so scary and so confusing for folks when they're thinking about, all of the horrible things we call it, your end of life plan, what's going to happen when you die, all of those really emotionally charged ways that we talk about these things. But I know that you have a different way that you approach these issues. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy and, what gets you up in the morning and how you approach these things?
Sure. Look, there's attorneys who started estate planning back in, England or whatever, that we get the trust law. We're the worst branders on planet Earth because the life insurance industry realized that you don't call it death insurance, although that is what it is. But the attorneys were still stuck in the 1700s. We're calling it estate planning. No wonder 64% of people die without a will. No wonder no one is doing anything because no one wants to talk about their death. Here's a news flash. Every single one of us is going to die, but who cares about that? We care about our life and legacy right now. So I've, created a concept called life and legacy planning. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people, all these estate attorneys I see now, everyone is saying we're a legacy planner. It's just a sexier word for estates, right? But the fact is that there's so much planning that can actually happen during life that is beneficial, like the asset protection planning I was talking about, right? All of us are lawyers. We have a very actually contentious, if you're an owner, I mean, bullseye on the back. You get success, a little shine. People want the shine, baby. And they don't want to work for it. It's a lot easier to destroy than to build. So we need to be very careful. And we need to make sure that our livelihood is not going to rest on our last client being able to wipe us out because of a whatever, right? And even if there's no merit to a claim, how long does that take and how much stress and anxiety does it take from us? What if we could have a completely protected way to live so we never have to worry about it? What if, because people didn't buy long-term care insurance, it was too expensive back in the day, they're now looking at 20 grand a month in payments to a home care facility, or to a nursing home facility? What if by retitling and putting in a certain type of trust, you don't have to worry about those expenses? I mean, what if your child, you don't want them to get everything at 18? Because like I tell all my clients, at 18 in the day, they're going to be broke on the street. Can you imagine getting millions of dollars or even a few $100,000 or even a few, like 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 at that age? You're in college and your friends are your life. You don't know how to handle the money. You don't have the vessel yet to handle the money. And let's not even talk, I mean, like your kid goes away to college at 18, God forbid, they go on a drinking binge and they end up in the hospital. Well, you're no longer their, you're the parent, but they're 18. They get to say and do what they want. Who said an 18-year-old is an adult? I don't know, but okay. So we need a healthcare proxy to make sure that you're still able to speak on behalf of your child. All these little things that we need to think about as professionals.
So you brought up a number of things that we could think about. And, the more that I delve into legacy planning, the more things I see. Oh gosh, is that something that I need? Is that something that I need? Is that something that I need for the people who have nothing, right? Who are starting from scratch? What is kind of like the starter kit
Sure.
for a legacy plan for someone who's new to the game?
The foundation of your house is the following things: your will, your living trust, your power of attorney, your healthcare proxy. Power of attorney says, I'm in a car accident, something happens to me, I cannot make financial decisions. Guess what, people? The bills still come, must have someone appointed. Healthcare proxy, hey doc, I'm in an incapacitated state, I cannot explain to you what I want done. Someone needs to be appointed. Otherwise, you're looking at a very expensive conservatorship or guardianship, depending on the state you're in, what they call it. The will's dear judge letter. Hey judge, I know I'm dead now. I can't tell you what I want to do. So here's what I'm going to do. And it's not as we all learned in law school, the intestate code, which is kind of the backup plan. We all have a will. It's written by the government. So if we want to write something more specific to our family, we do a basic will. A will is kind of tip of the iceberg, because if you are buying a will, you're buying a very long process for your kids and anyone you love who would be inheriting, because it goes through the process called probate. A lot of people know they need to avoid probate. They don't know what the heck it is. Probate is the process to prove a will. Literally, that's what it means in the Latin. And that process, just as an example, I have three probates going on in New York right now. Two of them we filed 2 months ago. We are still waiting to get a file number. That is how backed up it is. It is insane, okay? And the amount of money, I mean, it costs a fortune. Every attorney bills hourly or percentage of the estate. If you live in California, if you don't have a trust and you just have a will, you must be stupid, because literally the percentage that's allocated by the statute that an attorney can charge in that estate would make you topple over. For a simple $1 million estate, and that's fair market value, right? That's not net, gross value. On the first $1 million, I can charge 23 grand. If you have a little rinky-dink house in Southern California, you're over that $1 million mark. So people don't consider this. A living trust, what does it do? Same as a will, except for it's private. You literally, I talk about the circle of trust. You hold the hands of the people that you love the most. There is no interruption. There is no third party judge having to make a decision. Also, much less likely that litigation will happen because of that private transaction. Again, in California, where I also practice, one of the many states that I practice in, it's a little bit nuanced. You have to serve within 120 days all people in the family tree. So it's still kind of as inviting to that, oh, make a stink if you want to. That is certainly what happens with a will in every other state. So will, you have to get, for example, in New York, a waiver process. So let's say Laura is appointed as my executor and Aaron is one of the beneficiaries. She would have to sign off and allow for Laura, let's assume her sister, to be appointed as executor. Well, if Aaron has a bone to pick with Laura, and or if they're unequal in the will, it invites the contest, and that can cost literally everything.
All right, so I have to ask you, trusts are like the sexiest thing that people hear about, and also probably one of the most misunderstood elements, right, of your legacy plan, and yet one of the most powerful. So can you give us a little sense of who needs a trust? Is there a tipping point at which somebody should really consider setting up a trust? And what kind of costs are involved? I mean, because there's got to be, what is the reason why don't we all just have trusts? Why isn't this, buy a trust on the open market? Like, this is as easy as ordering something from Amazon. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So I think it's a great point. I think that's a big reason a lot of people don't even have simple wills, is the cost. Look, honestly, I built a program called Life Legacy Legal, which is like a do-it-yourself will and trust, which tops out at $1,000, so that it would be much more affordable to the masses to do. The going rate, depending on your state, is around $5,000 for a base plan like this, including a living trust, which is still peanuts compared to what it would be the second you get a retainer for litigation and or for just a happy family that's going through probate. So that's what it is generally around the country. Here's the deal, Jess. It's not really the document that is so time consuming, okay? It's not a secret that there are drafting softwares. There are things that make it easier and quicker to do. It is knowing, what do I put in that damn container that I just established, which is just a container. Without the coffee mug, forget it, the coffee goes everywhere. But you have the mug, that doesn't necessarily mean the coffee is in there. You need to put it in, which we call funding the trust, which I would say 90% of professionals do not do with their clients. So an unfunded trust is not worth the paper it's written on.
I can't tell you how many people tell me that they have a trust, but they have no idea if they ever went the next step of actually, switching their assets over. So that the assets are in the trust, and it's just, okay, so who set that up for you? Because I don't think that it's serving the purpose that it was meant to serve.
And you know what, truthfully, because it's not really legal work, and it's hourly and time consuming, and most clients don't want to pay a lawyer X amount of per hour, because they're like, oh, I can just change the bank account. And they can, but they don't, because it's a pain in the ass. So people don't do it. And honestly, the banks, they don't want you to do it, because realistically, to get the money out, even in a probate, good luck. Oh, they're great at taking the money, but they're not that great at dishing it out, people.
So other than the setup costs, are there ongoing costs related to maintaining any of these pieces of your plan?
No. So basic plan, no, because the basic plan, unless you make a change, unless life really changes in a certain way and you redraft, the ongoing cost would be the funding. So the deeds cost money to record with your state recorder. Okay. So it's a few dollars here and there. It could be even a few $100s, like in New York, Nassau County, I think it's $600, $700, $800 just because they can. So that's a cost to put it in, but once it's in, it's in. The other, and that's it, because typically in a revocable trust plan, which I call plain vanilla, you go into Baskin Robbins, it's your plain vanilla plan. You are typically the trustee as well as the grantor and the original beneficiary. There's nothing else for you to do. It's you, living, breathing you, except for it now has that privacy protection, the ability to include additional trust for your kids, etc. Okay? And the probate avoidance, the big one. When you do get into more costs is when you do more sophisticated planning, of course. So let's say that you are going to Wyoming to do a domestic asset protection plan because you want to make sure that your practice is not going to sink your family if, God forbid, something goes wrong with the client. Well, that will have ongoing costs, because in a state like that, you would get a private trust company. So it's just like administrative costs, a few $100s or a few, $1,000 a year of ongoing paying this and that. Now, there are also trust companies. So let's say you don't want to be your own private trust company. You don't go to Wyoming, you go to Nevada. Well, in order to get jurisdiction there, unless you're a resident, you have to have an administrative trustee, which is a trust company that is located there. The cheapest one will cost you between $2,000 and $3,000 a year. And the most expensive are, by the way, doing AUM, which could cost $50,000 to $60,000 a year. So you have to really understand what you're buying when you buy these and what the ongoing costs are. So basic plain vanilla, basically no cost. Ongoing, the more sophisticated plans, yes, there is a cost. And typically you're doing asset protection planning because you have something to protect, right? You have more money, you have something going on that is worth that extra cost to be able to really insure. It's kind of like your mega malpractice insurance policy, because the malpractice covers you for $1 million and it keeps going up every year, right? Because we have more and more years under our belt, more and more opportunities to, unfortunately, God forbid, get something like that served upon us. that is your mega kind of, I don't give a shit, because after the $1 million, even if it goes beyond that, I'm completely secure and protected. It's also a very good negotiation strategy, because if you tell opposing counsel you're going up the wrong tree, it's an empty well, they would kind of be stupid to keep going, which is why from 1997, the first domestic asset protection law statute was passed in Alaska. 19 states now have followed suit. Literally, there are 5 cases in the history of the DAPT that have even ever gone to an, any kind of judge or anything. And most of them are in bankruptcy. So it's like you go against the government and you might have an issue if you did it fraudulently, like if you did it to avoid paying. But many of these trusts don't even go mentioned in the case law, mostly because it forces the settlement.
Mhm. And I like how you have described this as it can be a continuum. You don't have to do everything, under the sun immediately, but there are some basic pieces you want to have at the beginning. And then as your situation changes, you can add on, you can morph, you can revise, right? But I think there can be such a barrier to even getting started because it feels so overwhelming, right? People don't even make a will, because even thinking about creating a simple will is, number one, you have to think about death, right? You have to think about you have to make all those decisions that you don't want to make about what could happen with your children, what could happen with your home, what happens to the things that you've inherited from other people. But I love how you describe it. Look, you got the plain vanilla. When you're ready for mint chocolate chip, this is what you're going to look for. And when you're ready for the sundae,
or some sprinkles, whatever. We can also we can keep the vanilla and add some stuff to it.
Yeah.
It's very look, people make everything so hard, mostly because I think the attorneys want to be able to justify their fee. And I think it's complete and utter bullshit. At the end of the day, here's what you need. Boom, 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 boom. Get it done. I don't like dilly-dallying. It's like we have so much good to do in the world. I think many of you are like me. We went into the law because we want to make a difference. And you don't want to spend 3 hours talking about your death with your estate attorney. It's like boom, 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 boom. Here's what we're going to do. Let's make it happen. That's how I practice. I don't like all this ridiculous spending 2 hours just to justify your fee. The fee is the fee. This is it. Let's move on. That's it.
No,
and that's my practice.
There's a you can get it 90% of where you want it, and it will be so much more effective than having nothing. Right? It's that difference between, am I going to make it perfect? Am I going to make all the perfect decisions the first time that I talk to Natalie? Maybe not. Maybe you'll change your mind. That's why Natalie is there. You can't change your mind.
People, the number one roadblock for young parents of getting their will done, they don't know who to appoint as the guardian. And they go, okay, great. Have Joe Schmo judge who's never met you, doesn't know you from a hole in the wall, and your kids, have them go to Child Protective Services until the judge can figure it out, or you figure it out. Mm-hmm. And if there's but my parents are older than me, duh. But why do we think term life insurance is so cheap? Because likely we're not going to die young. So it's just in the God forbid moment, what will happen to my children? And Child Protective Services I've never heard a parent say, I can't wait for my kids to go to Child Protective Services. God forbid, who says such a thing? Of course you want your kids to be taken care of by people that love them. And let's say it's your sister, and your sister's not that great with money. Great. Appoint a big bank to be the trustee to protect the money, and or your brother who's a hedge fund manager but doesn't like kids, like the day-to-day. Have the sister do the day-to-day and have them work together as a team. It doesn't have to be all or nothing with one person.
Yeah, we lawyers love our all or nothing. It's very, very dangerous, right? Because we want it to be 100% perfect, make 100% of the right decisions, but not making a decision at all has already made a decision, right? You're going to let someone else make that decision for you. We have some questions that came in. Yeah. So Natalie, what's the best way to find the gap in someone's plan, assuming they even have a plan? Like what kind of process do you go through with, let's say we talked about someone who has nothing, starting from scratch. What about if someone comes to you with what they think is a really good, set of documents, and what are you looking for when you're making your assessment?
So you basically look as if you were doing an estate administration. Okay. So you're going to say, give me the documents. Let me see them. Then you're going to say, let me see how your bank accounts are titled. not just your bank account, your life insurance, your IRAs, 401ks. They shouldn't go directly into the trust because of negative tax consequences. So who are the beneficiaries of those? Do you know how many people, Jess? Do you know how many? Literally, the divorce attorney gets you to the goal line, gets you the divorce decree, and it's like, good luck, baby, good luck, next chapter. Where the heck are the changes in the beneficiaries? Do you know how many people who come to me years later and say, my ex-spouse from 15 years ago is still the beneficiary of my plan?
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. The law provides for that and says like, okay, they're severed and blah, blah, blah. Do we really want to buy ourselves another lawsuit? I mean, that's why you got rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
You already settled that. So just take the next step and get it done. So you want to look at basically accounts and how they're titled and the documents themselves. Now, if someone has a will from 20 years ago, and 3 years ago, I had just gotten married. I had no kids yet. And I was living in California. I've since moved to New York, back to California. Now I'm in Denver. I mean, I have 2 young kids. My whole life is different. So in 3 years of that, your 20-year-old document that still has a guardian for your kid and your kid is 37 right now, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So these are the things we need to look at.
So what, of course I have to ask this, right? Because we're professionals and, we always bring a level of expertise and we get to see people who have kind of tried it on their own first and then come to us when they have decided, oh dear, what have I done? I'm not sure that this is working. What kinds of pitfalls do you see people getting into when they try to execute these types of things on their own? I may have some, optimistic lawyers on here who maybe don't practice trust in estates, but, feel like they could write a will.
My legal Zoomers. Look, the legal Zoom documents aren't bad. The issue is that they're not properly executed. With the 2 witnesses that are disinterested. So what happens is there's quite a lot of wills that are not being accepted into the circuits courts because of that. So
wait, the last step. What is it about these last steps? We just we're fine, and then we drop the ball at the end.
And you can't fix it because at that point you're dead. Literally, quite literally, you cannot fix it. So then it reverts back to the intestacy statute. That's the issue. Mm-hmm. That is and so the issue with the wills is that, and or the power of attorney and advance directives, if they're not properly executed, by the time you need them, it's a little bit too late because that means you're already incapacitated. And then the issue with the big issue with the trust, whether you use a lawyer or not, is the funding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, these are, and it's all the last step, right? You think you've signed the document and you're done and you can wash your hands of it. And then you realize later, oh man, I forgot to get that notarized. Oops. Yeah. Or I forgot to actually move the funds into the trust. Oh, I have a trust. No, there's nothing in it, right? That's not the situation we want to find ourselves in.
A lot of people do the pour over will, right? We typically do a pour over will into the trust. And people ask me, why do we do that if everything's supposed to be in the trust? I'm like, well, in case you get a heart attack on the way after you found out you won $100 million in the lotto and you didn't get a chance to put into your trust. And more likely it's because as your life changes and you don't call me and it's just a life change could be a new bank account.
Well, define what a pour over will is and what the characteristics of that for the folks on here.
So you have a living trust. Let's say you put your house in it and nothing else. Well, you still have an estate. So that will says, hey, judge, I created a living trust. Everything goes into that living trust. And it should be divvied up in the way that the trust says. That is kind of the basic plan that most practitioners are doing. And we do that because it's a catch-all. In the event that there's anything still in the estate, you want to make sure that it flows through to the trust.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We had another question come in, and I think we answered that in terms of actually, right, because moving assets into the trust is a big deal, and it is apparently a step that, people seem to fall down on. Is that something that an attorney should be doing? Could a financial planner do it? How do you suggest that be handled by folks?
The best way to do it is a team approach. You want the attorney basically coaching and managing the process. and you want to work with a financial advisor who has all the accounts and who can make sure like they're doing it on their end. We also can do it for our clients for sure. But the fact is that that is a separate charge, and it's just a different, because it's an hourly process to go through all the banks. And so if there was an amazing financial planner, this should be such a smooth, beautiful process for the client. You work as a team and you make it happen for the client. Then you check back in about 3 months to say like, hey, Jess, have all the accounts actually been transferred? I want to see their new titling. And then you're golden. That is the best way I have found. I think that attorney advisor relationship is so important and so huge. Oh, hi, Jocelyn. I see your little one joined. What's his name?
His name is Cairo, like the city in Egypt.
Hi, Cairo. I have 2 little ones too, Ariel and Brielle. You can come over to Denver anytime and play with them.
But I would love to.
Jocelyn, do you want to ask your question? I know you had one in the chat, but you can go ahead and ask now. You're already on. Hi, Cairo.
How would you suggest young parents without careers, so maybe from poor neighborhoods, how would you suggest them to get started on guardianship and getting trust on the books?
Ariel, I like your comment. Ariel, thank you. It's a great name. I agree. So the trust, look, Jocelyn, what I would suggest is this. If we can also do a trust without having the trust document. And let's say someone doesn't own a piece of property or doesn't have substantial accounts, doesn't want to pay the $5,000 to an attorney. Okay. What they can do is a will-based plan, and nothing should ever go through the will. So in other words, the Totten trust that we all learned about in law school, that like your professor is this renowned, writer, blah, 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 but they've never done a trust in their freaking life, and they don't even explain what the hell a Totten trust is. All it is putting a freaking beneficiary on an account. That is free. Can be done at the bank. I mean, like literally, it's that simple. It's really that simple, but people want to make it complicated. I don't. I think simplicity is beautiful, and that is the key. You want people to actually do this planning because, in my opinion, like the surrogacy court, what the heck? And why are they so overwhelmed that I can't even get a file number for my estate from 2 months ago? There's an issue going on. And if so many people are dying with no will or just a will, it's a lack of education. And we can't blame them. I mean, they don't even teach us the stuff basics in law school. They teach you they make this so difficult and hard, the trust in the state. It's ridiculous. It's quite simple. It's how to live your life in a financially successful way.
Yeah, I think, Jocelyn, especially for folks who are starting out, and there are so many ways to avoid probate that don't necessarily involve setting up a living trust and maintaining it and having to talk to a private trust company. But you do get to a point where those methods don't work anymore, where you don't have a 401k that you can make a beneficiary of. You don't have an insurance policy that has a beneficiary. You don't have a bank account where you can make sure it gets passed on to somebody else if something were to happen to you. There are a lot of assets that do have that characteristic, but once you get outside of that realm, you're going to need a more powerful tool. But I think it's great thinking through what are the things that you can do early on versus when you get to a certain point, those tools aren't going to be available anymore. You're going to need something more powerful. You're going to need the sprinkles.
We start out, okay, I came from a very working class family So I go to law school, and I went to St. John's Law in New York on a full scholarship, thank God, which was a huge, huge boost in my life to be able to do that and not have to pay back anyone or anything. And it also gave me the ability to go at 24 years old and start a firm, because I was like, you know what? What do I have to lose? Right? So amazing. And then you start making money and you upgrade your life, okay? I went from X purse to a Chanel. Just like in everything, you upgrade your plan too. I mean, for me, it was really important to lift up and be kind of a beacon of light for my 3 younger sisters and for the community to say, here's what's possible, So of course you're going to upgrade yourself. And as you do, you upgrade your plan. It wouldn't make sense for me to be talking to people who don't have much money about asset protection plans and tax planning when the tax planning only comes in currently over 23 million, might change under Biden's plan. I mean, come on. But like once you get to that level, of course you need to understand that, because otherwise, why would you give 50% to the government? You've worked damn hard for that. You've paid the income tax already. Let's just avoid the other stuff.
Mhm. No, I think those are great. So we do have some time we have a few more minutes left with Natalie. I want to give folks a chance to ask questions if they have them. Otherwise, I have plenty of questions for Natalie, because it's not often that I get to have an estate planning attorney at my full attention. So while I'm waiting for questions to come in, you had mentioned this earlier a little bit, and I know that this is really important to you, Natalie. Talk to us a little bit about long-term care insurance.
Oh my
And
God.
how you approach it for somebody who is early in their career, and how you approach it for somebody who feels like they missed the boat and now, they're in their 40s or they're in their 50s and they're only now thinking about long-term care insurance. Talk to us about those two scenarios and how you approach them.
40 and 50, you haven't missed the boat. This is the time. Literally, I tell people who are in their 20s in college, buy a life insurance policy today, right now. You're never going to be younger. You're never going to be healthier. It's literally almost free. It's less than a Soul Cycle class a month. And today, no one's going to Soul Cycle anyway, because we're all Pelotoning, because it's still a pandemic, okay? So here's the deal. You buy it as soon as you possibly can. What happened with long-term care policies, just to take you back in time, they used to be standalone policies. So they were quite expensive. Many carriers have exited the long-term care realm because it got so expensive. So what did the life insurance companies do? They added as a pretty inexpensive rider to your life insurance policy. So instead of you having, let's say you have $1 million policy, you have a long-term care rider. You can then draw against that death benefit during life up to a certain point, depending on your policy limits, for your long-term care. The long-term care will wipe people out. Literally. It is so expensive, and people are living longer. Like how many people 9,500 do you know? It doesn't mean they're healthy. They're alive, but they need a lot of help to be alive. And that's costing a lot of money. And no one ever said like, oh, I want to lose all my money in the last 5 years of my life, but it happens a lot. So to me, it's like a no freaking brainer. Just get that long-term care rider on the life insurance policy, call it a day, and know you're good.
And Ari also made a good point about disability coverage. This is also something that comes up, especially like people get asked at work, oh, do you want short-term disability? Do you want long-term disability? Do you just want to add it in? And then of course the question of when you leave your job, then what happens? All of that. But so can you talk a little bit about disability insurance as well? I think people are a little confused about that and how it kind of works together with long-term care.
Yeah, it's very important. Look, I'm a big proponent of insurance. I mean, you pray you never need it, but if you need it, God, you need it. Mm-hmm. And that's it. I mean, your income, I wasn't born into a wealthy family, so I rely on my income, and I rely on my husband's income to be able to live our lives that we have built, thank God. So that's an important factor. And it's basically just income replacement insurance.
Yeah, there are so many pieces to the entire financial puzzle. And what I always tell a lot of my clients is I'm kind of like the gateway drug. I am the first financial professional they may meet with. I help them with cash flow. I help them with budgeting. I help them with paying down debt, with starting to get into the habit of long-term savings. But I am not the last financial professional they're going to need, right? And when you get to that point, you understand, oh, wow, there's this whole world out here that I would like to understand better, or at least know that I have the right pieces in place. And I love that there's someone like you, Natalie, out there to help them with some of the most important pieces of their financial puzzle. So how do they find you? Where can they get in contact with you? Tell us all the things. I'm
all over LinkedIn. I sometimes grace your TV screens. Well, who watches TV anymore? It's more just like, ridiculousness. It's so
if you're on YouTube, we'll find you.
Yes, I have my stuff on YouTube. Again, all over LinkedIn. My website is www.goldbergllp.com. I will also put in my email in the chat as well as my cell phone. If anyone of you ever need, feel free to call, text, whatever.
Oh my goodness. I'm not going to put your cell in the show notes just for any crazies who come along and see the video, but everyone who showed up live, you now have Natalie's direct line. So go ahead and pepper her with questions.
Just truly I'm in a family practice. This is about like, can you imagine the first 5 minutes you meet me? I'm like, okay, how much money do you have? Who do you love? Like which kids do you love more? Literally, like people are living. So it's a very intimate area. I don't think you can get more intimate with people. So they need to know that you got their back.
You are the one person who I think gets in deeper than I do, right? Just a little more intimate. We do talk about children in my practice, but we don't talk about who's your favorite, right? Who do you plan on supporting?
People want to be equal. I have a pretty high net worth family right now. Their business is about $10 million a year. And we're doing planning for them. And they're like, well, we want to make it equal for the kids. I'm like, well, what does that mean to you? What if your oldest son is the one operating the business, your middle one is like a worker bee, kind of doing a non-important or very easily replaced job, and your daughter doesn't know A from B to the business but just wants to get a little money. What is actually equal between the kids? And you might think like, oh, your older son, he's great. But if he's the one who really is the brains of the business, and if he doesn't feel like he is treated fairly, that business is not going to succeed, which is many reasons why, they say from t-shirts to t-shirts in 3 generations. The grandparents build it, they're in the soil, they're building it up, the second generation, and the third generation, this is not the business I want to be. I want to be an artist. I want what God bless. But the fact is, if you build that business for longevity, you need to make sure the operators are happy. And that means having tough conversations. And I go, just blame it on me, you guys. I don't care. I'll ask point blank, like, Jessica, what do you want? Ari, what do you want? No one asks their kids, what do you want? It's like that Notebook scene, when like Allie and Noah were like,
in the rain.
Goes, what do you want? And that is exactly what this area of practice is. People guess, and they all want to make it equal. Equal is not necessarily equitable. Mm-hmm. You got to have the tough conversations. And I get it. It's hard to have it with your kid because one of them is a lunatic. They'll lose their freaking mind. And, I get it. But the fact is, you don't have to be direct about it. I just do it for you.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it is so nice having someone to blame for those conversations.
And I don't care because you know what? Like it's what's best for the family.
Yeah. No, it's such important work you're doing, Natalie, and I love the way that you are bringing this to everyone and making it approachable and making it fun to think about, and just giving us all the tools that we need to really make good decisions in our lives. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all of the participants. The comments in the chat have been great. The questions were great. I really appreciate your time. And you guys know how to find Natalie, and now you have her cell phone. So just reach out if you need anything.
I love new friends. So seriously, anytime.
All right, everyone, take care. And we will see you next month at the next Zoominar.